Welcome to Real Issues, where housing meets reality. I'm your host, Brian Gass. I'm the designated broker here at One Real Estate. Today, we're going to be talking about why having a car is a problem, according to planners. Middle housing is this fun new term that state and local planners have come up with that helps them to mislead the public on what's going to be happening with the single-family neighborhoods in Washington. Now, there's 3 stages to their plan. First, they needed to change the name. There's a big rebrand. That's what middle housing is, because people know what multifamily means. It means rentals. And multifamily is synonymous and goes like peanut butter and chocolate in a Reese's peanut butter cup. That's why they needed to rebrand it.
Wait a minute, what is this all about?
Every single type of housing that they say is middle housing, except for apartments, has always been zoned multifamily, used multifamily. It has been bought, sold to this day, forever, as multifamily rentals. You can check out an in-depth discussion that we have on all things middle housing on our website at realissuespodcast.org. We go in depth on that. You want to make sure that you get on our mailing list and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Make sure you get up to date on everything that's going on. There isn't anything new that comprises middle housing. There also isn't a single style that is even affordable in the same sense as the affordability of buying a detached single-family home. We have other videos that we prove this. It is really just affordable for the city. We have a video on fees, but don't kid yourself. It has nothing to do with affordability. It has to do with fees. We explain that. There isn't a single style that's affordable in the sense of competing with detached single-family homes, but they do need to lie about it because it's easier to do it with a new term that nobody knows about and they can't be called on it until it's too late. Now, next, in order to destroy the single-family zone neighborhoods, just changing the name, that's not going to cut it. They need to remove all the nasty single-family zoning and their very low density requirements. That's what states are doing, including Washington. 3 or 4 years ago, Oregon did it. You can see the disaster that is the Portland neighborhood in those areas. I have a video on that. Step 3 is in order to get these multiplexes into these smaller sized family, lots, they have to make room as much as they can by getting rid of all the parking minimums when you're developing. And they're going to lie about how that's a good thing. All right, let's talk about why your car is the problem now. It starts by gaslighting. So you'll always hear about how getting rid of parking is a good thing and it's for affordable housing. If you look at the city's most recent proclamation about removing all parking minimums, you're going to see that their claim is anywhere between, I think it's $20,000 and $60,000. What ends up happening is they talk about it and say parking requirements often limit the number of units that can be built due to limited space. Enhancing environmental stewardship. Can't look at a study or housing and think we can just have more climate change. That's just going to make housing more affordable and available, right? It says lowering the cost of housing. Each parking space generally costs more than $20,000 in Bellingham, and they're passed on to the renters and the homeowners, right? We only build what's needed. By not requiring every structure to have a certain number of parking spots, people can make a choice for themselves. You're going to see that's a lie. If you look at that, you're going to say, well, by their logic, let's just get rid of parking minimums and voila, that makes housing more affordable. Problem solved, right? But the issue is they don't provide any real numbers as to how many units it's going to save or how many units you're going to get or the percentage of savings or if it's even going to help the tenants or the builders at all, right? But that's what we get from the city and the mayor with their big proclamations. I have seen some of these, I call them outcome-based studies. Easiest one to think about is when a study was produced that said, hey, pregnant women should smoke when they're pregnant to soothe their nerves. This is a real ad right here, real ad. That used to be. Well, that came from some study saying that cigarettes must be good for pregnant women. So what I can tell you is that the majority of these studies, they're vague on purpose because any savings they claim is going to come from underground parking. But let's take a look at that study that they're quoting. Oh, look at here. Very first page. What do you think that is? Do you think that's a cute little duplex that's going in your neighborhood or a big monstrous apartment complex? That's the first image you see. So parking reform can boost home building by 40 to 70%. Home building. The gaslighting and the lying is synonymous with the term middle housing. They cannot lie without talking about it. They cannot deceive without telling everybody misleading information. Boost home building by 40 to 70%. More evidence that parking flexibility is the key to housing abundance. Nowhere in here says 20,000 in Bellingham, the study they're referring to. Let's just say it's 20. Or they also say in one of their statements, oh, up to 60. Let's say it's 60. So here's what they talk about. They're saying larger studies from Buffalo and Seattle, after parking mandates were relaxed, found that parking reform had a wide impact on the housing market. They showed that 60% of new homes in multifamily buildings ended up with this new flexibility. Multifamily. They already had multifamily buildings. What they're talking about is parking in parking garages where they're able to make more apartments with fewer parking garages. Gene Templeton redesigned his small apartment building to create 13 homes instead of 9. In Bellingham, Washington, the first new building permit since mandates were reported in Old Town, now unconstrained by the size of the parking lot, was designed with twice as many homes that would have been designed as before, which again is a lie. When they say twice as many homes, okay, they're talking about apartment complexes. This example they're using is an apartment complex. Their housing reform for parking is for apartments that already have a big footprint. Of course, they can put more units in. We're talking about the destruction of neighborhoods from this middle housing lie. Not, of course, you can put more parking in or more home. I like when they say homes. They don't call apartments anymore. They're homes, right? Home. This apartment, we had 24 new homes. No, they're apartments, not homes. It's a lie. If they talk about middle housing, it's going to be a lie. Let's get back to this thing. So the key I wanted to look at is it said, excess parking can take up space in buildings that could otherwise be used for housing. Adds costs that are set by revenues and can determine whether certain types of housing projects fit on sites of various sizes, AKA the big fat foot in the tiny little shoe. This is what they're talking about when they're gaslighting you. So if you remove the parking requirements from these, I call them the plexes, right? Duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, any of these rental units, it's going to be a disaster for every neighborhood in Bellingham. It's guaranteed. Let's talk about hypocrisy. You believe the city and the mayor that cutting 20 grand parking spot, a one-time cost, magically, it makes housing more affordable. Case closed. You might not want to visit the FAQ section. Bellingham's housing FAQs talks about reducing fees. It was an FAQ, like, shouldn't you just reduce your fees? It says, quote, reducing fees does not guarantee lower home prices or these savings will be passed on to residents. The market plays a more substantial role in determining the cost. Maybe someone should have the mayor or the planning department explain how cutting a one-time fee for parking in this market makes housing somehow affordable. But if you cut it out, it doesn't make housing more affordable. The market determines that. Is there some sort of magical difference? It's called hypocrisy. The government wants its fees, and they're going to fight to protect it because middle housing is all about the fees. It has nothing to do with affordable housing. They could give two craps about affordable housing or the damage that they're bringing on. They just want their fees like a drug addict wants their fix. Let's move on. I'm going to give you 3 big issues on getting rid of parking. 1, there is not going to be a choice. There's going to be no choice for off-street parking. They're going to jam everybody into every inch they can, and there's not going to be parking for anybody. 2, they do not give 2 craps. You will not hear them talk about personal safety or the risk of damage to your property for parking on the street or not having a place to park that you can secure easily. 3, the streets can and will become way more dangerous. Now, finally, I am going to share with you an easy solution. If the city's just hell-bent on their 20 grand savings, we're going to have them put their money where their mouth is. We're going to show you how it's going to work. All right, I'm going to tell you from experience that when the city says it's going to be up to the individual developer, that's a straight-up lie. There is nothing that has to do with planning, permitting, or land use that's up to anybody other than the city, the state, and the feds. The steps of the planning department are littered with dreams that have been crushed by anybody who's tried to develop anything, especially in Bellingham. I have a perfect example. I have a builder, build some houses, putting some ADUs in them. 2-car garage, they wanted a third space for the ADU. They were going to do the little curb park and say a little curb, cut the curb in and pour the curb in and say like, hey, we want to be able to do this so the third person can park. City said, no, ADU's got to park on the street. That's real world, okay? So they're lying. It's like if the government's mouth isn't moving, they're not lying. If it's moving, they're lying. Let's just talk about this. 90% of Whatcom County residents, which I assume is Bellingham too, have at least one car. So I guess the mayor and the planning departments don't give a shit that you don't have a place to park. They don't believe that you're going to ever have a friend or a family member who wants to come visit and park their car. All right, number 2, let's talk about safety. Nobody at the city seems to give two craps about safety. Think about the single person who's walking to and from their car at night. How many cars get broken into, right, when they're parked on the street versus in your garage locked, right? Where's the statistics that talk about when an area is essentially rentals with no protected parking and the amount of car thefts or personal attacks that happen when you're going to and from your car? It doesn't take an urban scientist to figure out that with increased density comes decreased space available for everybody else, including parking, driving, crossing the street. The common sense person knows that they don't need the sun to be out to tell you that it's sunny. They also can tell you that if you have a covered parking garage or a covered area that is locked up, your car is far less likely to get broken into and you are not going to get attacked while you're in your own garage, right? Think about that 20 grand cost too. Let's say even if it's 60, let's triple the cost. It's a one-time cost that's only applied when you build. You're essentially going to stretch that cost over the life of a parking spot, which has got to be forever, right? So if you have a single female going back and forth from her covered garage or parking spot 4 to 6 times a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks in a year, seems like a pretty good deal to have that parking spot there. What's a good deal for anybody who wants to use that spot? People who are from these pro-no parking spaces groups, they're never interested in looking at the higher risk of personal safety or car breaks in when cars are parked on the street versus uncovered or protected garage spaces, right? Or when an area is largely rentals versus owned. Why? Because they know the answer. All right, let's look at number 3. Dangerous. Most, if not all, single-family zoned areas have smaller streets. They're closer together. Parking on the street is usually reserved for visitors or residents. Anybody who drives through Sunnyland, Columbia, Letter Streets, etc. I don't care. It could be Seattle, it could be Linwood, could be Mount Vernon. They're not exactly the skinniest roads to travel. I got a friend right now who's got a 70 grand plus truck. It's a really nice truck. Lives in Columbia. He parks on this street once in a while, a couple times. This guy's had his truck hit. He almost got totaled one time because it's vehicles with trailers or RVs can't navigate these tight little streets that they're creating with all these cars. Look at this thing. Speaking of pictures, here's some photos I took on my way to get the photos from my friend. What is it? I don't even know what it's called that people are parking on, but look right here. They're actually parking on something. They're not parking in the road. What do you think is going to happen when you got twice as many people parking either off the road, in this little spot that's between the sidewalks and the road, etc.? What do you think is going to happen when you force multifamily rentals and there's 6 times the density in the same space? I guarantee you they're going to have multiple cars per household, and they're all parking on the street now. So clearly, these planners don't give a shit, but I do. So here's the solution. Instead of cutting out a parking spot, I say we don't need to lose any sleep, still keep the same lives that we lead. We get rid of impact fees. Impact fees get charged for every permit type, per unit or door. That means if you're a single, one charge for $10,000 or $9,000. New house, $9,000. Duplex, $18,000. Triplex, like $30,000. It's per door, right? Fourplex, $4,000, $40,000, on and on. And it doesn't matter when you add a bedroom, they want those impact fees. 4,000 of those impact fees are for schools. Now, I'm not against schools being funded, but I do have a problem with an impact fee specifically charged to help mitigate the impact of a development, and it's statutorily only allowed to be used for that purpose. Can't build a new district building with that money, which I'm pretty sure Bellingham did. You cannot replace a building with that. You cannot update a building. It's for expanding capacity. So, what do you need an impact fee when Bellingham School District, since 2020, has had a declining enrollment every year? A lot of this isn't entirely their fault. COVID kind of screwed with the school districts, but they're not helping each other. They're not helping their cases out with how the schools are run. In reality, what are you charging impact fees on capacity that isn't there? Or it's going in reverse. You got more and more capacity. It also doesn't help that Bellingham is the second most unaffordable place to live in all of Washington state, second only to Seattle. Will enrollment go up as we become more and more unaffordable and we're like Aspen of the freaking Northwest? No, it's not. They still get charged those stupid impact fees. Now, we could pause them. I'm not against that. Let's talk about park impact fees. Since 2000, the number of parks in Bellingham and the acreage that we have has grown 200% of our population. Besides the impact fees, Greenways levy keeps adding trails and parks. The Watershed Protection Project keeps taking land away from where we can build stuff. I'm all for open space. I mean, I think the Greenways levy spent like $70 million buying property since its inception. I'm all for open space, but at what cost? When is the number of parks enough? And when I bought my house in 1998, I think there was like 45 parks in Bellingham, 65,000 people. And now it's 95,000, like what, 50% increase? But we have two times the growth of our population. We have like over 100 parks now. What good are all these parks if you can't live here? There has to be a trade-off. Let's look at the efficiency in the planning department. From 2014 to 2024, the planning department has issued 14% fewer permits. And yet they charge almost double the amount of fees. So you get fewer permits, almost double the fees. How's this going to happen? Well, the mayor said it to herself. She has a November 2024 proclamation where she says she wants to reduce the time and uncertainty in the permitting process. You can certainly start right now. Pick up the difference in a parking spot by making the freaking planning department get off their ass and issue permits in a faster pace. Now, I'm going to say those surely should pick up the cost. Even the $60,000 cost, the deceitful cost of parking. But I don't know why they're being so disingenuous. I have to say, I'm tired of saying lying. I say disingenuous, but it's lie, lie, lie. It's like if government's mouth isn't moving when it comes to middle housing, then it's not lying. But the minute they open their mouths or they write something, it is a lie every single time. Maybe it's because they can't prove that it adds any real savings for the tenant on the parking thing. That's for sure. So they toss in affordable housing, hoping that you're not going to realize that when it's done, you're not going to have a safe place to park and you're not going to be able to safely walk to and from your car. Now, you also won't have a place for your friends or family to park or visit. You're going to have people smacking into your car on the street because it's so crowded. God forbid a kid walks out between the cars because nobody has any space to see what's coming. But hey, C's got to get its fees that they're just not going to get rid of like a drug addict on their fix. Thank you for listening to this update for Real Issues. If you found this episode useful, please share it with somebody, especially anybody in any neighborhood in Washington who owns a property that got the target on it to being infilled with multifamily rentals, and telling people that fourplexes and triplexes and sixplexes, that's with no parking, that's a good thing, right? We need to prove that it isn't. And remember, housing policy only works if it works for everybody. So again, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell to get notified when we bring out more videos that updates. You also want to get on our newsletter. If you want to subscribe, go to our website at realissuespodcast.org. Till next time.